All right. Good evening, folks. It's just about 6 o'clock or 6:01, depending on whose watch you look at. So we'll get the select board meeting started. Thank you all for coming. We got a fairly full agenda here tonight, although some of it's going to move very fast after the Phelpsville report. So hopefully we won't be here extremely late tonight. So with that, the agenda items are changes to the published agenda. Anything?
I just have one small clarification on the December 9th meeting minutes. Appointing a chairperson, I just want to clarify that Mr. Allen said that he was taking this on until Bob Hartnett could return, which is in the minutes, but my motion was I nominated Robert Allen as chair until Bob Hartnett returns to take the position. And that's the only clarification that I had.
Okay. Minutes of the December 9th select board meeting. We have 3 meetings to approve tonight. The December 9th meeting, the December 7th budget meeting, which we didn't do on the 9th, and the December 23rd meeting, which was the APRA discussion, the APRA funds discussion. So we'll take the December 9th select board meeting minutes first. Other than your changes.
That is it. Otherwise, I would accept them as approved with that one small modification.
I would second that motion. We'll declare them accepted as printed. The December 7th meeting was a budget meeting. And we missed that last month to approve. We talked about it, but we missed it to approve. We went through the budget line by line. Several items that needed to be added when receiving included insurance. There was some discussion on a few new items, and the sheriff's department increased their hourly rate. Other than that, we went down through the budget and did probably 90% of it at that meeting there, which would bring me to say that going forward, I think maybe we'll have one meeting, possibly on a Saturday, and do the entire budget. So people that come will be here for the entire thing and it'll be done. But we'll see what we've got to deal with in 25. So motion to move.
Yes, I would accept those as written.
All right, we'll declare them accepted as printed. The other one was the meeting of December 23rd. That was strictly to adopt the resolution for the remaining APRA funds. We did have a few people here. They also discussed the 6 or 7 items that were already approved and money spent. Bottom line was the amount left in APRA funds of $59,420.42. The resolution moved that money to the general fund for the purposes of employee retention. So that has been done. You will see it in the budget when the town report comes out. It's showing that as income. And basically that now frees up the money we were to spend for those people to spend as we wish. So, and I've already got a place for 15 or 18,000. So I'll bring that up later.
I can hardly wait. I would make a motion to accept those as written as well.
Declare them accepted as printed. Takes us to the treasurer's report, excuse me.
December revenue was $80,619.93. Expenditures were $339,859.49. And the balance at the end of December was $695,544.19. Delinquent taxes are $69,789.12.
We have a real small one left in 22, and the remainders are 23 and 24 taxes.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, accept those as written as well. Sorry.
Thank
As
you.
reading.
Any questions? Comments? All right, we'll declare them accepted as printed. With that said, the action items start with the Phelpsville wastewater report. John is here.
All right, I'm John Ashley from Phelps Engineering. Yeah, long ago. I'm from Du Bois and King, and I am going to first make sure that sharing my screen goes smoothly. Share. And see if yes, okay. Okay. That's good. And just to double check, are the people online seeing the slideshow?
Yeah, I should be able to.
Okay. All right, so tonight, here to present the 90% report on the wastewater feasibility study for Phelpsville. We have been in 2 times prior to this in the fall for the 30% report, which was the needs analysis for the wastewater study, and the 60% report, which went into some alternatives that we could look at for wastewater. We got feedback from the 60% meeting on some additional alternatives the town wanted us to look at. We've put those in this report. I'm going to present about those tonight. We have updates on a few of the alternatives we looked at earlier, and some of those being ruled out at this point. So all together, we've looked at 8 alternatives that are listed here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because we'll go into all of these as we go. But the total existing and future wastewater flows that we estimated from the earlier parts of the study come up to 23,800 gallons per day. If everybody existing was to connect and there was an allowance for growth, that's the total wastewater flow that we're looking to try and accommodate in these wastewater alternatives. I will briefly cover just a couple of highlights from the needs analysis and the earlier alternatives, and I'll skip over those mostly so we can focus on the things we looked at in more detail in the 90% report. So just a quick refresher from the early report, the 30% report, the study area we are looking at here, because I'm going to use that term, is the one that's highlighted in color here. It basically follows the zoning district boundaries for Phelpsville. And there are a couple of other lines on here. There's a solid purple line that is the designated village center according to the state Agency of Commerce and Community Development. And then this other purple line that's farther outside that is a 1/4 mile offset of the designated village center. And those are areas that the state can provide funding more easily for wastewater. So skipping ahead through most of the needs analysis, here's the table showing the calculations of those flows, and it's a little bit nuanced in the wastewater rules, the difference between these 2 columns on the left, but when you are permitting a lot for wastewater, if it's a single family home, you're typically required to permit it for 420 gallons per day, and that's what these totals are based on in the leftmost column. And then I can make my mouse appear again. There it is. The second column over is showing a difference because when you combine the flows from from 20 or more homes into a single system, you don't have to count them at 420 gallons per day for that system. You count them at 245 gallons per day, up to 50,000 gallons a day. So where you get an even lower flow. These are the allowances that we've got in for growth, which total 4,600 gallons per day. If you divide that by 245, you'd have the equivalent number of homes that comes out to, just for frame of reference. And that is 18 homes. So that's what this looks like in terms of wastewater flows. We
Sorry, did you want to hold questions right to the end, or if there's clarification along the way?
I'm flexible. I don't know your preference.
It may be hard
Question
to
on the wastewater
jump
flows.
back, yeah,
Sure.
so go for it.
So one would just be around the commercial assessment. You explained the other one I had, which was about residential drops, and that sounds like it's just an assumption that you built in that somehow you assume less if people are put together. I'm not sure.
Right.
It works, but like, sure, okay.
Yeah.
On the commercial side, can you just give us some context, like adding 800 in that third column is the equivalent of what? One pizza joint? How does it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that's just applying 0.5% on top of the current commercial, plus some assumed. I think we had an assumed build out of something being added, and I'd say 800 gallons a day would be sort of a mid-size restaurant or a gas station with a couple of sets of pumps. You know, a convenience store with a couple of sets of pumps, something in that range, with maybe a little, something else.
Okay. And so my last question on that, which is it's related, maybe you'll answer it later, but it's in that context, like how much do the proposals that we're gonna talk about have elasticity built in so that if these assumptions are not perfectly right, because they won't be, because it's hard to be perfectly right, do we have 10%, plus or minus on there? Can it be off by 50%? Like what's the
Yeah, I think that will come out later as we go through them. And then if you don't think it's been fully addressed, you can go.
Let's do that. Thanks.
Yeah, okay.
One other question about that potential capacity. What about public gatherings? I mean, there is a facility here in this building. We've had outdoor activities, something like that.
It's a good question. I used to know this better before they updated the wastewater rules more recently, and I've done less permitting of them since then. But I think the new number with meals being served is 8 gallons a day per seat, and it used to be 10.
Okay.
Without meals, it's a number less than that. Yeah, I mean, imagine a gathering where everybody used 8 gallons of water. It's down from what it was, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the new one is 5, but it's better than it used to be. And certainly, even though in terms of elasticity, being able to deal with, if we get feedback from the town or the public during this that we want to include a larger allowance for anything, we can put that in. This is the 90% report because we haven't finished it. So we can still do that even right now with this part of the report and codify it that way. So this is just a summary of the wastewater needs as a refresher. The highest rising ones, providing a replacement wastewater option for lots with aging leach fields and small space for being able to replace their existing wastewater system when it fails. Providing a replacement option for lots with failing and low functioning leach fields to protect human health and the environment. Those are very similar, but just the purpose being a little different. Making it more affordable in the first case, and in the second case, protecting human health and the environment. Removing conflicts between well shields for existing water supplies and the leach fields. With the small lot sizes in the village, there are many cases where the isolation zone, you would prefer to not have septic systems in around your wells have leach fields in them. And that does not mean that those water supplies are contaminated, it just means that they are closer than the current rules would allow you to put one today. Protecting the water quality of your rivers and streams, and providing infrastructure to support infill redevelopment and new development. So we have looked at, let's see if I can navigate my mouse again, here we go. We have looked at the, on the right-hand side, all of these areas in yellow as potential sites to be considered based on, it's a large area that's undeveloped, unbroken up by lot lines, and is mapped as well-suited soils. After going through the study and having some discussions with landowners, having no discussions with some landowners, it's boiled down to 2 preferred sites available within the community, one at the school and one just east of the study area, which is in a wooded part across the stream, east of the school and greenhouse. So those are in the preferred alternatives we're looking at tonight, those are the ones that we're really focused on, because for various reasons the other ones have been not compatible with the landowner's use, or other reasons they're eliminated from consideration. So of the 8 being recapped, the alternatives 3 and 4 that we looked at in the study, I'll hit in a minute. Really 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll just cover those when we get to those maps. The other ones we've added in here are a single disposal system on the elementary school site with 2 ways of collecting the wastewater to there. Alternative 5 is a single disposal system on the site east of the study area. We're calling it potential disposal site 11. It's a little bit smaller than the area that looks feasible at the school. Alternative 7 is to collect all the wastewater and pump it to the West Windsor municipal wastewater system. And 8 is a combination of collecting the wastewater to the south and then splitting it between the school and the potential disposal site 11, because it helps with the type of wastewater treatment you would have to do because of having a more leach field area available. So those are what we're focused on tonight in the alternatives. Alternative 1 was a collection system to bring the wastewater to the school and really just add on a little bit to the leach fields there, but not redo the leach field at the school. And the site is pretty small in terms of potential capacity versus the need of 23,800 gallons per day. The best we could do was get it up to 11,200 gallons per day, and that makes it fall out of consideration compared to the others. Alternative 2 was a community water system that could serve the whole study area, and that helps address some wastewater needs because the water supply is being able to be removed where there where they're too close to leach fields, but it doesn't provide as much wastewater capacity as any other option. Alternative 3 was looking at having, next time I'll rehearse making my arrow bigger on my screen, but it's up here, you know, a site in the north, a site up the hill a little bit, sort of centralized, and then a site in the south. And really, this one just fell out because of, you know, incompatibility with the land use. So that is off the table, but it was presented in the 60% report. Same thing with alternative 4, sending all the wastewater to the north. So here's one of the alternatives we're focused on tonight, which I think, given that my mouse isn't really showing up, I'm just gonna go point at the screen. That's because it's gonna be helpful here.
Excuse me.
This is a collection system that would go to the school site. This red area, or next to the school, is the area that's mapped as well suited for a disposal system. We did some hand augering around the school's existing leach field, and we have their old test pitting results from when it was permitted. So it's a larger area, much larger than the current leach field. So in this alternative, we're looking at building that out to its maximum potential, with an indirect discharge wastewater system in many more trenches than are there currently, but the same effect, just, you know, there's a leach field there right now, making it much bigger, occupying most of that area. We stayed away from some of the other uses, but you know, areas like that at schools are commonly used for soccer fields, or there's really not much effect on the use other than you can't put the structure in it, or, you know, run any other pipes through it. So that's what would be the disposal site here. And the way that this would be collected, this is just a traditional sewer system to collect the wastewater to there. So from the north, wastewater would come this way. From Tyson Road, would come back this way. We have a pump station that would take the raw wastewater and pump it just up the hill and get it past Tyson Road. South of Tyson Road, everything would run to the south, just by gravity, and to the school site. And to get close to, or to be able to meet the 23,800 gallons per day of the whole area, this would need what's called a tertiary wastewater treatment system, which is one that has biological treatment. It's the same type of treatment. When people think of wastewater facilities, it's that, but this would be on a much smaller scale, not the big tanks you see, big open tanks with railings everywhere that you see on the side of the interstate and things like that, but that's the same type of treatment that would be happening here in a much smaller scale, probably in a much more discreet way. We're designing one that's 95,000 gallons a day for the town of Waitsfield. That is, when that one's done, it'll look like a barn to the people passing by on the road. And this is only 23,000 gallons a day. So you do something like that with the treatment part of the system. And the problem with this is, it hits the side. So I'll bring this over. So that's alternative 5A, and then alternative 5B is just that same disposal site and treatment system, but a different way of collecting the wastewater. In this way, people's septic tanks would stay in place or be updated if they needed it to be suitable for connecting to the system. You would collect the effluent from their septic tanks, not the raw wastewater. The solids would still be in the septic tanks. The system would need to maintain the septic tanks by pumping them when needed. So that would be that would still be in place, and you would connect them to the system after their septic tanks. On, north of Tyson Road, people would be connecting with a small, pumping chamber after that goes into a shared effluent force main that comes and brings the wastewater just south of Tyson Road. And then in the Tyson Road and south area, people's effluent from their septic tanks would go into the pipe by gravity and flow down to the school. These type of systems have some benefits compared to the traditional gravity system because you can use smaller diameter piping because you're not worried about the solids. You don't have to have as many sewer manholes. You're allowed to be able to maintain those pipes with just clean outs instead of full concrete structure that you get into. There's some savings there. The part, where people are connecting by pumps, that line doesn't have to keep going deeper and deeper as you go. You can follow the grade, and so you have some savings in putting in the effluent force main. So that's why we look at that alternative. Do an overview of all of these, and then we'll get into the details a little bit. 6A is the same gravity sewer collection system, but now going to the site, the wooded site east of the school. Six B is the same effluent septic tanks and septic tanks with pumping going to the potential disposal site 11. Alternative 7 is the connection to the West Windsor municipal wastewater system. There would be a collection system like the ones we've been talking about, the raw wastewater ones, that would have a pump station that would pump through a force main following the roads all the way over to just near the post office in West Windsor in Brownsville. Their pump stations, while been recently upgraded, they all have standby power. They're in good condition. Our preliminary discussions with West Windsor, their operator and their administrative folks, have not thought there would be any significant upgrades needed to be able to take the wastewater. Their system pumps the wastewater to the Windsor wastewater treatment facility, which has more disposal capacity available also, or treatment capacity available. So that's, from those standpoints, it's potentially feasible. It's about 5 miles of wastewater piping.
Would they be willing to meet us at the town line, and they can just take care of it? Just a little levity for you. I assume not.
I assume that's a lot closer. Yeah. So then alternative 8A is the hybrid option where we use both disposal sites and collect the raw wastewater and bring it down and pump, after it's treated, pump it to both sites. And part of why that is worth looking at is just based on the desktop numbers, where for either one of the individual alternatives, you have to do tertiary wastewater treatment with aerobic treatment of the wastewater. For this, because of the amount of leach field available, potentially, that you would only have to do a recirculating sand filter type system or a textile filter system. They're basically pump the wastewater through a trickling filter. Some of the treated water comes back and gets recirculated, but it gets highly filtered, but no biological part of the treatment. So it's less expensive to run. So it's worth looking at, because obviously building both of those is more expensive than building one of them. but the treatment, on the treatment side would be saved. So we looked at that in terms of construction and life cycle costs. And so 8A is the raw wastewater, same raw wastewater collection system, and 8B is the effluent collection system going to those. Besides costs, we looked at environmental impacts and benefits. The standalone potential disposal site 11 doesn't have as many, as much of the same benefits because it just doesn't have the amount of capacity available that the school site looks like it does for the two of them together. It's a little bit smaller area, and it's more challenging in terms of going across the stream. Access to it is a challenge. It's harder to build on than the school system would be. So we've summarized the costs and capacity in the report. We've got all the earlier alternatives in this same table. But jumping ahead to 5 and below, we have a range of $3.26 million for the full system build out, up to $3.72 million with total disposal capacities for 5 and 8 of 23,850 gallons per day. 23. I shouldn't have carried these out to the ones place. Sorry, that shouldn't imply that we have kind of accuracy at this point. But they're pretty close to the same capacity when you do tertiary treatment and use just the school site versus doing recirculating sand filter and use both sites. So that's the important takeaway from this comparison. Obviously, if you connect it to West Windsor, the capacity is basically a non-issue at that point, but it comes out to about $8 million. And so we haven't done much further analysis of that because it's hard to picture making that compare financially to the others for serving Felchville.
Just one point of fact, can you clarify exactly how many residential structures there are in the service study area?
Not sure the number that are residential, but it's 77 properties in the study area. Okay, and I don't have the breakout there.
So approximately 254 properties in the Granda's townwide, just a point of reference for everybody else.
So this is where we came to that the preferred alternatives really shake out to be alternative 5, A or B, versus alternatives 8, A or B. The collection system that uses just the school site versus the collection system that uses the two sites. This is a summary of some of the comparison between them. The things that I want to point out that maybe aren't obvious. I did in talking with the school about their site. One thing that they mentioned was that the area did flood in 2023. That doesn't mean that you can't put a wastewater system there, but it's not. If the flood mapping became updated and we weren't allowed to build there, that would fall off the radar. But it's not currently mapped as the flood zone.
What would be the implications of flooding?
Flooding, in the case of the leach fields, this happens in Rochester to their leach fields regularly. The water goes into them and then goes away, and then they use it again. That's what happens. It's built in a flat area that acts as floodplain so it doesn't get eroded. In terms of the tanks and any other tanks and electrical are really the only things that affect. So you have septic tanks or other tanks associated with the treatment. They have to have watertight, heavy lids that won't get floated off the tanks and have them, be inundated with water. And on the electrical, any electrical components have to be built 2 feet above the base flood elevation, which is now 200-year flood, I believe, but it might be, I think it's a 200-year flood, and you have to be 2 feet above that. But, those are the main things from a design standpoint. And so those are your things that protect your asset. And also, if any of that flooding had to do with an obstruction at a certain structure, that could be looked at as part of the solution. If there's any mitigation that could be done to help keep the area from being flooded in a future event, that could be considered in the design phase and permitting as well. We talked about most of the other differences. Oh, so another aspect of the collection systems, when you design a wastewater collection system that's going by gravity anywhere, there's something called an infiltration allowance that you have to build into your design and permitting when it's over 500 feet of pipe. And that's basically saying, at some point, you have to plan for that this system will leak and more water will come into it than just your wastewater. And so that infiltration allowance takes away from how many people you can connect to the system, because you're budgeting for it in your permanent design flows. So one thing that the septic tanks collection system helps with is that on the gravity collection system, it's a smaller diameter pipe that you put in, and the infiltration allowance is proportional, it's directly proportional to pipe size. That's one of the things you're multiplying to come up with how much infiltration. And on the pumped part of the collection system, there's no infiltration that you need to account for. So it gains you some more capacity than a gravity sewer system does. And so we have that compared in the costs. Just starting on this slide. The gravity sewer collection systems, at this point, based on the layouts we came up with and the pipe sizes, we come up with a 2,640 gallons per day of infiltration that you have to back out of your capacity, which is equivalent to 11 equivalent residential units, which is the flow for a single family home. And with the step and steg, the septic tank based collection system, that is reduced to 1,020 gallons per day, which is the equivalent of 5 homes. I have a different one of this. It may not be on my list. I have the do nothing alternative on this too. Okay. Let me just double check something. I'll come back to this this slide comparing.
What's the number of that slide, John?
That is 41. Oh, good point. This is probably my first set. You just open it all. Yeah. So, back to that. So in besides the cost comparison, we compare non-monetary factors: sustainability, human health protection, water quality, Smart growth and sustainability. I don't know why sustainability is in there twice, but these are the state's criteria. Energy efficiency, green infrastructure, permitting and easements, and operation and management. And when you start ranking the 4 preferred alternatives, that way they really come out to comparable numbers in terms of the non-monetary factors. Okay, so this is probably a good time to pause and just see if I have the other one. Desktop, sorry about that. Okay, it's being recorded, stop share. Oh, okay, it must be still on the server. So, I think I have the PDF in my sent emails. Yep. So I'm just gonna open the PDF right now and finish the presentation that way. Alright. Share again. In here. Get to go full screen. It's kind of hiding on the Zoom stuff. There we go. No, we'll just make that disappear. Okay. Jump ahead to 41. Okay.
Back to 41.
Yep. And there we are. Okay. So the first is a brilliant, I guess. Thanks for bearing with me. So these are the cost comparisons of them, and alternative 0 is the do nothing alternative. It's there's a cost associated with that. Doing nothing means that people are still replacing their wastewater systems when they fail, and so we have information on the estimated age of people's wastewater systems through the study area based on things I talked about in the 30% report. And so we take that information and project out to replacing those systems in the 30 to 40 year range from when they were built, and the relative costs expected based on whether they've got good soil, whether they've got much area available to build it, and just bring that all together to see what total, plus assuming that people will pump their septic tanks every 4 years. And those are a smaller part of the cost than the replacements, but that's in there too. And that comes out there, and there's all of these get compared in terms of the capital costs. There's none in the do nothing alternative. The present worth of operation and maintenance costs over that 30-year period that this is compared by or analyzed over. And there's a salvage value that you account for, and this is the way that the funding agencies want these compared. The salvage value is that once you've built something, it's got value, and so that's part of the equation and what the net present value is. And then those first two are on the plus side, and the salvage value is on the minus side. That gives you the net present value of of each of those alternatives. It's a way of comparing them in the same terms. So the do nothing comes out to be the lowest cost. The lowest cost of the do something alternatives ends up being alternative 8 with the traditional gravity sewer collection system. But when you then take out compare how much capacity they have, when you take out the infiltration allowances, the lowest cost per user ends up being the septic tank based collection system for alternative 8, which is the one with the 2 leach fields and a lower level of treatment. Oh, yeah, no, not in the slide show. There we go. So some potential funding alternatives to pay for something like that with millions of dollars of price tag are the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. That is what the current study funding has come from. USDA Rural Development would also be a potential funding source for you. The town or village of Phelpsville in the town are below the statewide median household income, so you'd be eligible for funding from either of them. The Agency of Commerce and Community Development funds projects like this as well, especially if you can, serve a village center like this. And we've included information in our report on individual on-site septic systems loan program. It's kind of a very specific program that's available, though. We've got it in there in case anybody needs the information. But you have to be a certain income level and have to be denied funding for replacing your septic system by, I think it's 2 other potential loan sources, like a bank. And then they will loan you the money to replace your septic system.
May I just ask a question about the operating maintenance costs?
Yes.
Rather than looking at it from an NPV perspective, but you just, roughly speaking, if you look at like the annual O&Ms for these systems, like what are we talking about here, roughly? And I assume that's a cost that the town would bear.
Yes.
For you to put it in place, so just.
Yeah, the users.
Scale would be good.
Typically, the users have to be able to pay the operation and maintenance costs, and so I'm just trying to with other things on my screen. Here we go. The more detailed breakdown of that's actually in our report, so I'm just going to open that to look into it. Other questions on if you're going to head to that?
I've got a question. With the systems where there's a septic tank involved, I'm assuming they would have to be operated and maintained to a certain standard to plug into the system.
Yep.
And did your cost include the cost of those tanks, or is that something you assume the homeowners would bear?
So we've assumed if the homeowners have a fairly modern tank with an effluent filter that doesn't have issues, there's no cost that is needed. But not everybody's going to have that. So we have some assumed allowances for that based on how old people's septic systems are right now. So we have some where we're assuming the whole tank would need to be replaced, and then we have some where we're just assuming that a filter needs to be added to it, an effluent filter. So we have that in, and it's all based on the ages.
Thank you.
Yep. Martha?
The O&M for the tanks, the pumping, you said they need to be pumped every 4 years.
Yep.
That would be a system cost or
Yes.
an individual way?
We have that as a system cost in the operation and maintenance. I think it's appendix H. Let me see. No. There we go. All right. you go. All right. So really, I'm gonna jump into, I'll look at alternative 8, just for example. For the annual operation and maintenance costs. So it is, 2.34 million over 30 years. Which is 78,000 a year. That is, not, that's at annual average.
Yeah.
So, it's gonna vary. There'll be some years where there's more needed than others. But that's the annualized average. Their wastewater operator costs allowances for replacing pumps, because pumps typically last about 15 years. So in the ones where it's the individual pumps, that's part of it. There are some other pumps in the system as well. Some annual engineering costs when you have an indirect discharge system like that. It needs to be inspected once a year. It's pretty moderate allowance there. Some building and grounds maintenance, laboratory testing and samples, septic tank pumping every 3 years. We have in the wastewater, the town wastewater options. Solids removal, bleach field replacement and repair, and energy usage. That's the buildup of the operation and maintenance costs. And then you have your debt service to pay for any loan that's outstanding from building the system. Martha?
You had, in the report, I looked at earlier, there was 45,000 for the operator for 8, and then 60 for 5. That's because 5 is a more complicated system to run, so you need more time, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, so the tertiary wastewater treatment system will need more wastewater operators. A biological system has to be kept in balance. You're relying on bacteria to break down the wastewater. They have to be kept under the right conditions to do it, versus a filtered system like it's pretty, you've got a set condition, you're putting it through a filter, and you don't have this tricky thing to balance. So there's more time needed by the operator, and a little bit higher level of operator competency and understanding needed. We do think in both cases, it would be a contract operator. And
What was that cost number again?
45,000 for the filter option and 60,000 for the tertiary treatment.
So, here's my head, I can only do simple math in my head, you have 68,000 for the O&M and about 45,000 the lowest cost for an operator, and that's gonna,
Those are in the O&M costs.
excuse me?
It's in the.
It's in the
O&M.
O&M.
Yeah. But anyway, let me back up and approach from another way, simple math, so 68,000 is the O&M, and if there's any debt service, it's hard to know how much debt service there'd be at this stage of the game, but it's gonna be some level of debt service, I assume, because most of these state programs require some probably conventional or local matching money.
Yeah.
So is it fair to assume that the annual cost to the town might be something in the vicinity of 150,000 a year?
Debt service you said was in the O&M as well? Or
No.
Separate, so,
It's
okay.
Because you don't know the amount of grants you might receive versus loans.
I realize it's hard to calculate that, but it's still a cost, and it's a substantial annual cost.
Yeah, so in
It doesn't cost.
the report right now, the example we have is that you've got 50% grant towards the construction costs. And we have assumed a 2% loan for 40 years on the balance of that, which is an annual repayment of 76,000 on the one I have open right now, which is even in this one. Yes, this is on 8A. And yeah, so in that, if that's your scenario, that comes out to $1,710 per equivalent residential unit per year. And a lot of, that's assuming no tax contribution towards the cost, which is how everybody wants to start these studies.
Just a couple more quick comments on the math. So if you're already at 150,000 in debt service in the O&M, good luck getting a 40% loan for 2% from any of the major lenders in the Upper Valley these days. That used to be available, maybe, pre-pandemic, but
no, that's assuming there are subsidized loans from the state revolving fund and the USDA.
there are 40% amortizations.
Depending on your income level, they'll definitely do a 30-year, and they'll do a 40-year if they have to make it what they determine to be affordable. And their target is 2% of your median household income is what they consider affordable, but they'll let it be higher than that, and if they have to give you a longer loan term to make it. So
Yes, and I understand that's gonna have,
Yeah.
I just want people to understand it's gonna have a major impact on the annual cost of the town. But I also want to ask one further question if I can, and is that median cost that they're talking about based on the median income of the village alone or the whole town?
I think the median household income we have in here is for the whole town. Yep. And I don't think we saw a breakout for the village when we put that in the report. Do you know that?
Well, it depends on what the grant source is. In West Windsor, they got a community development block grant for part of the funding. So they did an income study in just the village, and they got a little bit of extra money based on that, so.
Yeah, I want to, at the appropriate point in time, I don't know if this is it, I also want to talk about some stuff that's philosophically very different than what this report's based on. I hope there'll be time for that. But I don't want to intervene if people have other questions about the specific proposal at this stage of the game.
It would be helpful to maybe just to understand a little bit about the scope and the scale of, if you look across Vermont and how these have been funded in general, what's the range of percentage that the town had to carry in terms of the install costs? So we'll leave O&M aside for a second, but just like, is it anywhere from 0% to 100%, or is it mostly 30%?
I mean, I don't know, but I don't think anyone covers it 100%. I mean, I just don't think it would be affordable.
No, nobody can do it.
No, towns don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, I was going in the other direction, like,
Yeah.
can you get all this money?
I mean,
from-
West Windsor, I think, if I'm remembering right, the town was covering about 40%.
Okay,
And the
so
rest was
you had
grant
60% covered, 40% from the town was there. Okay,
And it really varies
yeah,
as you move through different funding cycles and
yeah,
administrations and
yeah,
agency policies and availability,
sure.
competition from other towns that need money too, and a lot of factors that go into that, but it's one of the important things, if you really seriously want to do something, it's important to keep the process moving along, partly so the public knows that it's going on. You can't, part of where Westford had their issues, they had a really good funding package, and the wastewater project moved along. I grew up in Westford, that's why I know a little bit, but part of what happened was when they were moving through the process, they basically kind of stopped for a while and there wasn't much happening and that void of information was filled by all kinds of information. So if people are supportive and want to do something, that's one of the recommendations, is make sure you keep moving along through the process. The farther you are into it, the more you know about what your funding availability is going to be. And the more funding agencies will say, okay, here's what we're going to give you. So it really boils down to, is it a priority for the community that you want to move forward with or not? And, some of that process along the way, you gotta have people that are kind of working on it. It's not blind faith, but you have to have some faith that it's gonna work out and that you're gonna find the funding. There are pots of money available, and this is one of the things that our state funding agencies prefer to spend the money on, because it has a lot of cross benefits in terms of our housing needs and you name it, just lots of benefits besides just getting a wastewater system in. Just wanted to go back to the original presentation.
John?
In going back there, can you identify the 77 structures in the village or your study area?
77
the
properties.
The properties, the number that have either failed or failing or soon to be obsolete systems. What's the hardcore number? Problem systems.
50%.
It's 50%, so
That's what the survey said, but the survey was given to who?
That's what I know.
Residents of the study area.
We have a button back
There
there.
we go. I can, hold on, let me just get back to that. That's from the survey results, but really, here, this has some of what you were just asking about. I think for
What was the participation in the survey?
20?
I have a question about the survey results. I'm looking at the pie chart. And I understand that the survey results
If you
that,
could just wait just a second, I was looking for the answer on the ages. Here we go. About half of the survey responses, okay, that's just in the survey. Sorry. Okay, I've got that number, I'll dig it out though.
40%.
It's, according to the survey, it's about 50%, and then when we did the rest of the analysis, I don't think it's that far off.
Slide 17.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
So we're talking about 35, 40 structures, properties, whatever you want to call
Yep, so, in the greater than 40 years category, we have 38, so that's about 50%. And the typical lifespan is 30 to 40 years. 30 to 40 years, so. Okay, sorry, where have you got?
okay, so you had a pie chart on the survey results. And there were approximately, 53% of the survey, people who answered the survey responded?
Yes,
And out of the respondents, only half said that they would be interested in connecting to a system if one were presented.
yep,
So that's only half of the people who are even interested in it.
yep. You could extrapolate how you want from that on the other ones that didn't answer.
Well, and I'm just wondering, did they not understand? Did anybody go back and explain the program to them? I'm not understanding how there could be the number of failures that there are, or supposedly that there are, and they don't understand.
Well,
Or they don't have the information.
yeah,
It seems to be a big problem, and
if you, Well, that tees me up well, I'll just cover the last couple slides here real quick. So, key factors going forward, right along lines of what you're talking about, are on here. The first things that we think, if you did choose to move forward with doing more towards this, is that, we need to really, we have had discussions with both the landowners at the school and potential disposal site 11. Both have said something positive, but nobody's committed to providing capacity. So that's an important thing to keep working towards and and feel like you're comfortable with. So I'm pointing that out. Those sites really need a lot more than the desktop review and a few hand augers that we've done to prove whether they have the capacity that you need. It doesn't work without them. So that's another important next step, and evaluating what their disposal capacity is. And then also interest in the landowners of connecting to the system. I think it's important to keep the public engaged the whole way through. And part of the outreach going forward is going back to everybody. It's not, you're not just going off the original survey, but then reaching back out to them with more information on that. The study was completed, here's what it showed. Take their temperature again, and it's always helpful if there's a local committee working with the engineers to do some education like you're suggesting. And that is an important part. That if this was going into a preliminary engineering report, it should be part of that. Is more engagement of the potential users and more education of them about the situation. And I've been at some recent a gathering put on by the state with a bunch of towns that have been working on this potential system for their communities, and that was a really common thread. You have to keep your public informed and engaged, and talk to people about what their concerns are and what they want. And some people just have to have the right conversation, and there was something they were worried about that maybe it could be looked at in a different way. But anyway, that's a great point that would be important to do going forward. So we've recommended next steps of the evaluation to have those discussions with disposal site owners, have some more discussions with them, do some real on-the-ground evaluation of the potential disposal sites, some test pitting, wetlands delineation, do a desktop look of whether they might be archaeologically sensitive, and come up with a better hydrogeologic evaluation of their disposal capacity. It can vary quite a bit from just the desktop review. And outreach to the users in the community. And the next step would be a preliminary engineering report and an environmental report. And that would complete, from the funding agency side, they call that step one. They call it the planning phase. Step two would be final design and permitting of the project that you have done the planning for. And then step three is bid and construction phase. So, sorry, did that help with your question?
John,
Yeah.
I have a question. You're presenting your 90% report at this point in time. What's left for us to see in the final 10%?
Final 10%, really any feedback that you want me to address, and any comments from the state funding agency. We'll address those and make it the final report.
Okay.
Is it premature to get on the state's priority list at this point?
So the state revolving fund has a priority list that they seek projects for submittals in this time of year. We've gotten the initial mailing for that, and this would be for funding if you were going to want to use construction money towards it in the upcoming fiscal year, which is July 2025 to June 2026. And I think it wouldn't hurt to do a priority list application, but not for that fiscal year. They do like to have a list that looks farther out at what the needs are. I think it helps them leverage money, and it all helps them plan towards, we're gonna have a big need in 2 years or 3 years. So I think I would recommend it, because you're at this point in the process, it keeps you on their minds. That would be, if we're doing that, I would need to work with the select board to get the applications, and then we draft all the engineering side, but it needs a town signature.
In terms of grant money, the grantors would require that you would be on the priority list. We have that experience with some other work, that, it would actually be in the Ascutney area, we'd have to get on the priority list.
That might be a different list, I think.
The next phase of work going into a preliminary engineering report, the state's funding that's currently available for that is not 100%. That is 50% up to 100,000 of total subsidy. So it could be, if it was $200,000 of engineering, which it wouldn't be, it would pay 100,000 of that. Yep, go ahead.
No, I just want to, before time runs out, everybody's brains turn to donuts. I just want to express a strong philosophical objection to a systemic approach to such a small universe of problems. You have between 35 and 77 maximum problem systems, and it costs a lot of money to move human effluent from point A to point B, and the further you have to move it, the more expensive it gets. That's just more pipes, more pumps, more everything. The advances in on-site treatment of human effluent have dramatically improved over the last several decades. And I just want to give one example. I'm not pushing it. I have no financial relationship with Clyde's Mulching, but they've been around for 50 years. They have some very sophisticated compost toilets and gray water systems that most anyone in town could probably afford to do if they needed it. And to spend this kind of money on a systemic approach to small, isolated, on-site handling, which is much more efficient to do from a cost standpoint, from an environmental standpoint, is how human waste has been handled for hundreds, if not thousands of years to begin with. Maybe not always in a very healthy way, but the standards and process currently exist. It's permittable in Vermont. Not a lot of people have done it, and I think it's because a lot of people don't even know it exists. And I just remain completely unconvinced that a systemic approach is warranted. I mean, if you were talking about the 254 structures on the grand list, if a third of those or half of those had problems, then I think you could justify a systemic approach. But I think for the small number we're talking here, I mean, the technologies exist to purify water. When Kevin and I think before you were on the Energy Committee, we were asked by the Planning Commission to do a study of who had concerns about drinking water, wastewater in the village. And of the 26 people who responded, not one single person was willing to have their drinking water even tested, even if we could get it done free. So to me,
They don't want to know the answer. No, there were several people tested.
yeah, but it was a very minute number of people is my point. And unless you can get some test water results, I mean, what are we talking about? It just doesn't make any sense to me, I'm sorry.
Well, as an example of what you're talking about, a Cletus Multrum system would not be considered a best fix on a lot of this size in the middle of the village, and wouldn't be permitted by the state. So it's not possible.
It's just, I'm just offering you one example.
Those people are going to be faced with building a very expensive system. If you're building one that can't meet the setbacks and is within somebody else's well shield, they're gonna be required to do a high level of treatment. They'll have a mini little wastewater treatment facility on their own lot. And it will cost that individual a lot of money, and that's really what it's about.
Other than a composting toilet and a central system, there's a system called the Presby system.
Yep.
From New Hampshire, they're local people, it's a patented system. They don't advertise that you can drink the water when it comes out of their system, but it's a system that never fails because you can flush it out. Granted, you do need some land for it, no more than you would need for an existing leach field. It can be built on top of an existing leach field because you remove what you have and bring in what they call septic sand, which is available from St. Pierre over in Charlestown. It's a great system. We have one in town. The owner of it is not here, but he can tell you how they work. And there's always the holding tank option. The landowner could put in a holding tank, which isn't a bad system. It does have to be pumped, but all these other things have to be pumped too. I don't know how many of you people know Charlie Kimball sitting here next to me, but he just put a system in his house that they say you can drink the water that comes out of that one.
It was an old system.
Different. But, there are other alternatives to spending a couple $1 million for 15 people.
We designed Presby systems for a lot of applications. They definitely have their use.
I think Presby's a great system. I mean, I put them in and I like them.
Yeah.
And they can be built right over your existing system. So if it's there now, it can be replaced with a Presby system.
Any idea of cost, Jim?
The cost, it's a little bit more than sand and stone, but it's not prohibitive. You can actually go to Presby University if you choose to, which is only in New Hampshire. Graduate from that, you can put in your own
PhD right now.
You can put in your own system, or you can put them in for other people. I mean, we've got kids in town that we spend $250,000 on their education for 12 years. Let's keep them in town. Let's let them put in some septic systems. Buy a truck and pump the holding tanks. Keep the kids here. I mean, Robert graduated from Reading, and there's probably 10 or so other people that did, but most of them graduate and leave town. Why not keep them here? My opinion.
Absolutely.
Maybe some of us are foolish, Jim.
What's that?
I don't think we should laugh that off.
About the people saying being foolish. So that was the joke.
Right.
Yeah, that was the joke.
We want to end up, we don't advocate.
Anything else?
No, not for me.
Not from you. Anybody got any other comments, questions, thoughts?
I do. This is a very complex, sophisticated endeavor. I would like to see numbers, cost numbers on a spreadsheet that would compare the different options, including the maintenance for those options, so that we would know what each of these 77 properties costs were going to be. The information that I've been getting is way too complex to absorb and process just by listening. I'd like to see something in writing that I could sit down and compare numbers.
Yeah, so the report that has all the debts should be, you're gonna put it on the town website, or?
The big one you sent,
Yeah,
the 90% of it is on the website.
no, it's on the website, okay. So, and.
What is not on there is just this slideshow that will be on there tomorrow.
Okay. So yeah, that'll have all the, you know, the breakouts of everything are in the attachments to it. So it's more and more, but it's all gonna be there and available if you wanna look at the report.
Where is it available from? What's the source of this information?
It's the report that this is just summarizing, and it's on the town website.
So it shows all the costs for all the various plans,
Yep.
including the maintenance?
Yep.
Thank you.
That breakdown should be on the town website. It's 159 pages. It has multiple appendixes, so that it will show you those.
159 pages?
Correct.
I want to look at it on one piece of paper. This.
Me too, but.
I second his
It's very
motion.
complex.
You need a big piece of paper.
That's not absorbable. I can't look at 159 pages and boil it down to a half a dozen different numbers.
Well, you don't have to look at the whole 159. They've got it summarized in the appendixes.
I want to see the
Yes.
numbers.
The numbers are all in one spot for all the different alternatives, and each one of the alternatives has 3 pages.
If we wanted to give you feedback after considering this a little bit, rather than having to deal with every person in the town, you have one point of contact that is your manager for this project, and who should we talk to?
Well, last time Lisa volunteered.
Please do contact me,
Okay.
because I will refer any questions
To John.
to my friend John.
That'll put them all in one place, yeah.
Thank you.
Top share. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
John.
Jonathan.
Thanks very much.
When is the 100% report due?
Well, my prediction is that that'll be after I get the state's comments, because they've been much slower to provide me their comments than the town has on others. I have a hard time predicting their timing for getting me their review comments. I'm guessing no earlier than a month from now.
Less than 5 months?
That sounds good. Yeah. 1 to 5 months is probably the right range. I'm optimistic. Lately, they've been a little bit more timely responding, so.
Well, as you know, we're in budget status right now, so I was just seeing if we were gonna get it into this fiscal year, get you settled up, so I don't have to plan anything for after July, unless we decide to do something more.
Well, I can get you a bill for what we've done. Maybe 10% left, but yeah, I'm not sure.
That's not a problem.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So, before we get into the next one, we're gonna adopt the ordinance as presented.
Correct.
Yes,
Does that work for you? Does that work for you?
yeah, I just wanted to be sure that.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump on the PC, either they or us will make the adjustments and hold another public hearing.
Excellent.
That one will be short. Oh, the other one will be short. The one we had tonight was short. All right, folks, we'll move on into the select board list of action items. Item number B on the agenda was the zoning ordinance adoption or not, based on the public hearing that we had just at 5 o'clock. And I think that if those of you that were here for that hearing realized that to get additional changes made between now and the end of January are going to be very difficult, if not impossible. So I want to make the motion.
Yes, so we're making a motion to adopt the proposed zoning amendments as is. And then we'll follow up with the planning commission afterwards to make additional changes.
that were discussed here tonight. I'll second that motion.
Great, all in favor?
Any comments or questions relative to what we're doing there? All those in favor?
Aye.
Move on. Highway status,
No, he's not there.
not there. I was afraid of that. Basically, town crew has been somewhat busy with these 1 and 2 inch and half-inch snowstorms, just trying to keep the roads safe. With sand, doing a little plowing at the same time. Got a little issue with the small truck. We're down to basically what we should be running, just 2 trucks right now. There's a very, very small leak in the gas tank of the small truck. So it would probably take 6 months to drain the tank. It's a drip now and a drip then. However, there is some gas probably built up somewhere, so I've advised them not to run it any more than necessary. With that said, I don't know the status of the actual highways at this point in time, but the ones I was on today was in pretty good shape. So those of you that live off the beaten path could probably tell me better than what I know personally, but. FEMA update. This is going to be short and sweet. We had a meeting a week ago today with FEMA. 3 people from FEMA, our daily or our normal rep, the mitigation gentleman, and the normal reps supervisor. We opened the meeting, had our pleasantries at the meeting, and Hector's comment was, this is going to be really short because we have nothing to discuss. And basically his second comment was, the ball is strictly in our court at this point in time. You don't owe us anything, and we will move projects forward as fast as we can. So,
We have one project left.
yeah, we have 1 project left for them to formally approve and then return to us for sign off. And once that's done, then we're basically done. We'll just be pushing FEMA and the state for funds.
We did receive 30,000 this last week from FEMA.
Where does that put us, how much we have received versus how much FEMA owes us still?
I didn't get a chance to update that, Lisa.
Ish.
Ish, we still are waiting for a lot from FEMA, how's that? I didn't get a chance to update that.
Okay, thank you.
I had a big spreadsheet I was going to bring tonight with those numbers on it. One thing that we have confirmed, our percentage rate of the total costs will be 2.2% once FEMA pays us and the state pays us. That, if I remember my spreadsheet correctly, is between $35,000 and $40,000 total. So it's not out of $1.3 million, again, give or take, maybe 50,000, but somewhere in that vicinity.
Somewhere in that vicinity. We can also claim the interest on the loan the line of credit that we had to take. We can also claim, we can get reimbursed for that. And for administrative time
And for administrative time.
that Bob and I have been tracking. So that'll be the last project that is submitted to them once everything else is obligated. So there is actual light at the end of the tunnel. It's getting a little bigger.
Is the administrative hours more or less than 1 million hours?
Dollars is what we're shooting for. I think the administrative hours are dollars. We were told was.
It's a, percentage of the
capped
total.
at 5% of the total expenses. And that would be something over 50,000, and we are nowhere near that, obviously. So that's basically hers and my time. They don't pay for mileage. We just learned that the other day, so that's out. But The one thing that we will end up having to pay for, I've asked a question, is we will have to have an audit done by a licensed firm. And I don't know if FEMA is gonna pay for that, but I highly doubt it. We
Unless
did-
they've changed from last time.
Yeah.
Nope, that's on us.
They didn't pay in 2012 or 13, and I don't expect them to now, and we're anticipating $20,000 to $30,000, and that will be in the budget. Line item in the budget. Emergency watershed, that's the work on Mill Brook, from Agony Hill northwestward. The two sites, the two furthest sites up the brook are complete, have been complete for a while. Site 1A, which is right at the Agony Hill Road and the culvert, is done. The only thing left to do there is they have to take the berm that they created for water diversion down to the water, they call it a flood platform. We have to bring the berm down to the same level as that. And they may have done that already, the excavators are still there. Site 1B is done, and that's in just a little further up the brook. That is done except for, again, reducing the berm that put the water into the old channel that was there prior to 2011. And then closing off the entranceway to get the excavators and stuff into the brook. So that will probably be done. If it's not already done, I haven't been up there for the last couple of working days. Shortly. The last site, Kevin,
Yeah, there would be a seeding and planting plan for those sites as well?
in the spring.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, in the spring on the bank, there won't be any seeding or planting in the floodway. That's all pure gravel.
Okay.
Yeah. Where we put the stone in and capped it, then those places will be seeded. The last site is up by the Bailey's Mills Bridge, just a little bit northwesterly of there. In fact, it starts at the bridge. And that was due to be completed on the 9th of January. Gurney Brothers told me there was no way they were gonna make that date. I applied for an extension. We got the extension through July 15th, is that what I told you? July 15th. The only reason we went that far out is in case Rivers engineer comes along and says, no, you can't do it now. You didn't get it done, so you can't do it now. We'd have to wait till July 1st to get in there and do it. But that's probably less than a week's project. So they may get it done before there's any issue with it. And then that project will be done. APRA funds update. Those of you that were at the meeting on the 23rd know what we did there, but basically Vermont League of Cities and Towns walked us through a procedure whereby the unobligated funds could be obligated and moved to the general fund. And it's kind of a hidden clause, I guess, in some of the APRA regulations, but you can use those funds for employee retention. So we moved them to the general fund for employee retention. What that does for us is that frees up the employee pay in the same amount of money, which allows us to use it anywhere we want. But APRA rules say it has to be used for this, so we signed the resolution and moved it on. We've moved the funds and they're in the general fund. You will see that in the budget as well. 59,000 and change. Right.
Yes.
25-26 budget update. It is basically done. There are a few, we found a little bit of a gotcha today, but once we got that corrected, It doesn't affect any of the income. It doesn't affect any of the expenses, but it was a line of income from the state aid that was missed back in 2023, and nobody caught it. I didn't catch it, Calista didn't catch it, my wife didn't catch it, and none of the voters got it. So it was holy crap. But anyway, we got it corrected, and we've got the numbers that will be correct in the budget that will come out in a month or so. Bottom line, as of today, and don't hold me to this and don't shoot me if this isn't the exact number, because Lisa and I will be looking at this again in the coming days, but thought I was going to tell you. Amount to be raised by taxes will be $718,728, which is up $14,004 from last year. However, it is down $16,700 from 2 years ago. So we're still in that same ballpark. People that I talked to last week, one day, I told them that we're going to be level funded. However, the audit for FEMA and a couple of other things, we've gotten some new information on. So that bumped it up a little bit, but so it's up $14,000. And I don't foresee any more issues.
Hopefully not.
So that's it. That's what I have. We're up to other, unless anybody's got any questions on the budget. We are up to other. Anybody?
I have a question.
Certainly.
It's come to our attention that Derek Chase on Bailey's Mill Road is advertising a series of events that he's holding at his property. He's charging a couple $100 per person. It would include camping and Class 4 road touring. So my question is, does he have a permit? Has he asked for a permit? It doesn't seem like it's allowable based on a lawsuit that he lost to do this kind of activity.
Well, that is the first I've heard of anything, sir.
It's on his Facebook page. He's advertising.
Have you seen it, please? Good. Well, I haven't. This is the first I've heard of it by any means, so I will have to do some investigation because I didn't know anything about that.
So I'm assuming he doesn't have a permit.
And he has not applied for one. That I know.
Okay.
Anything else?
Let's go. I have no others.
I have no others at this point in time. Therefore,
7:39. Make a motion to adjourn.
second. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, everyone.